it just became clearer that Iran has entered a period of internal fracture. What we see this Wednesday, April 1, 2026, is the accelerated weakening of President Masoud Pezeshkian. While the Revolutionary Guard expands its control over the war strategy and the direction of the regime, but real power is slipping from his hands. What happened was straightforward. Pezeshkian tried to signal a retreat, apologized to the Gulf nations that were hit, and promised to contain further attacks. The reaction came immediately, according to Reuters. The statement caused strong irritation among sectors of the Revolutionary Guard and the clerical elite, and the president was pushed into a partial retraction. This point is central because it shows that the head of the executive can no longer publicly maintain his own line. At a decisive moment, when a president speaks and another force orders him to retract, the political signal is serious. The ones occupying this space are precisely the hardest military and ideological structure of the regime. Reuters reports that after the death of Ali Khamenei and the extreme pressure of the war, the Revolutionary Guard took on an even greater role in state decisions. The new center of gravity of the system. It's no longer with the president, but in an armed clerical and security corps that prioritizes the survival of the regime above any moderation. That's where the idea of a coup comes in. Not necessarily tanks in the streets, but the practical removal of authority from a civilian president. Faced with a military machine that has started wielding more power. And why is this happening now? Because the regime is under pressure from all sides. The open war, which began on February 28, pushed the system to a critical point. At the same time, the economy was already broken, the currency was losing value, and popular discontent had already erupted in the streets. The Associated Press reports that hundreds of thousands of Iranians took part in January in the largest protests against the theocracy in decades. The response was brutal. Thousands were killed, tens of thousands were detained, and the repression continued. In other words, even before the war made everything worse, the ground was already cracking beneath the president. This crisis becomes most evident in the daily life of Iranians themselves. The AP reports daily explosions, businesses collapsing, families fleeing, and an unprecedented internet blackout since January, which has affected communication, sales, and even medical care. A doctor interviewed by the agency said that the blockade makes it difficult to check patients' medical histories and to verify correct dosages. At the same time, the regime's judiciary has become even harsher. Reuters reported on March 31 that people accused of cooperating with hostile nations may face the death penalty and confiscation of property. And even sharing photos or videos can be treated as intelligence collaboration. This shows how the regime tries to compensate for its political weakness with fear, censorship, and repression. The impact doesn't stop in Tehran. Iran's war is already affecting the world, and this helps explain the regime's desperation to maintain absolute control. Reuters reported today that German economic institutes have cut their growth forecast and raised their inflation forecast. Because of the rise in oil and gas prices caused by the conflict, there's also a detail that exposes Pezeshkian's weakness. All it took was a signal that he would be willing to move toward ending the war, with guarantees against new attacks. For the markets to react immediately, with a rise in the stock exchanges and a drop in oil prices. This means that the world sees the president as a possible way out. But inside Iran, this same movement increases the pressure from radical groups who see any retreat as weakness. The more Pezeshkian talks about restraint, the more the hardliners have grounds to isolate him. In the end, what we're seeing is the unthinkable in motion. Not a classic coup announced on national television, but a power grab from within, silent and harsh, against the Iranian president. The office remains, but his authority is being crushed. And why? Because the regime has entered survival mode. And in this kind of system, when a crisis hits, the president becomes expendable.